Hello guys, welcome back to the MMA Sucker channel. My name's Frazer Krohn, and as you can see, once again I'm on my own, but rest assured Tim will be back for the blockbuster UFC 290 preview next week. It's just going to be a short 15-20 minute podcast, reviewing the weekend that was and looking ahead to the weekend that is. I'll be honest, I'm not that enthused about this weekend's UFC card. Yeah, enough said about the less said about that, the better, in my opinion. The card itself, from top to bottom, is quite good. The main event for me is not the best, but that comes off the back of a extremely good card, Emmett versus Topuria. That main event, Topuria showed that he's got what it takes to be at the very upper echelons of the division at 145. Josh Emmett is coming off the interim title bout in which he did very well against Yair Rodriguez. Yes, he lost the fight, and yes, he lost it by finish, but that's not to say that he, didn't deserve. His position wasn't deserved at the sort of, upper echelons elite of the division. What I would say is that Ilia Topuria really showed that he belongs. He belonged at that peak, that elite level of the division. He's now ranked number 5 as per the updated rankings. He's ranked number 5, so that kind of just shows you just how good he is at featherweight. And for me, the next fight for him is the title shot, the fight that makes sense. And I think that it's the fight that we need to book for Ilia Topuria. The only other fight that I think would make sense would be a Max Holloway fight, but as we know, Max Holloway is booked against Chan Sung Young later on in the year. It's a difficult to, sometimes we say it's a difficult sell for Fighter X to get a title shot. It's a difficult sell to not give Ilia Topuria the next title shot because he's more than deserving. He's blitzed through everybody. Well, your submission guy, Bryce Mitchell, right? I'll submit him. Your submission guy, Ryan Hall, is one of the most dangerous people on the ground in UFC history. Right? Okay, I'll just knock him out. Josh Emmett, known for his boxing, known for his chin. All right, I'll stand and bang with him, and I'll dominate him over 5 rounds. A solid performance from Ilia Topuria, and a deserved, place in the top 5. You could argue that maybe a Brian Ortega, if Volkanovski, either, I think if Volkanovski loses to Yair Rodriguez next month, there'll be the rematch. If he beats Yair Rodriguez, he might go up again in weight and fight Islam Makhachev, because that was a very, very close fight. But you look at the top 5 of the division now, Arnold Allen doesn't do much for Ilia Topuria because he's coming off the loss. Brian Ortega has been out for, I can't remember the last time Brian Ortega fought, and yet he's still ranked number 3 in the division. He last fought July of last year against Yair Rodriguez, that shoulder injury. And then before that, it was September 2021 against Volkanovski for the belt. What I would say for Topuria, if he sits out now, he gets a title shot. It's whether we want to sit out, and it all depends how the UFC 290 main event between Yair Rodriguez and Alexander Volkanovski goes. We'll have to wait and see until that, and that's something that we'll talk about on the review show of UFC 290. Because the division at the moment is held up, but it'll only be held up for a week or so, for a couple of weeks, sorry, until that fight goes down. Josh Emmett, for the second week in a row, we spoke about it. I spoke about it with Marvin Vettori last week, and I'll speak about it with Josh Emmett. What a chin! He's got that dog in him. But it's also what I kind of spoke about last week on the podcast. You can't get by at this elite level with just a big swinging right hand. He's pretty one-dimensional when it comes to MMA. He has got the leg kick. He's got that big haymaker that he often lands. But if he doesn't land that haymaker, he's in trouble. We saw that against Yair Rodriguez, and now we've seen it against Ilia Topuria. But take nothing away from Ilia Topuria's performance. He was upsetting Josh Emmett in the middle of Josh Emmett's attacks. He was offsetting him. He was getting that quick jab, that leg kick. He mixed it up really well. He knew when to go. He knew when to hold off. He knew when to slip. He knew when to exchange. It was a phenomenal performance. And speaking of phenomenal performances, Maycee Barber in the co-main event put on I'd say maybe the performance of her career against Amanda Hebas. You know, she didn't have it all her own way, but when it did go her way, it was like a wheel down a wheel down a hill. The train did not stop for Maycee Barber. Phenomenal performance by Barber. Really, really good performance, and it's the kind of the performance that I think she needed to really sort of cement herself in the fly. You know, she's an established flyweight now. We know that. She's coming off this. That's her fifth win in a row. She gets a performance of the night bonus, but other wins have come. There's been a little bit of controversy over, you know, the Miranda Maverick win, very close fight. Andrea Lee split decision, close fight. Jessica Eye, she caught eye when Jessica Eye was on the sort of the way out. You know, she retired after that fight, and the Montella De La Rosa fight, she dominated Montella De La Rosa. But you know, this goes the performance that we saw from Maycee Barber was sort of vintage Maycee Barber, the one that we saw against Hannah Cyphers, against Gillian Robertson, against JJ Aldrich. The vicious, you know, aggressive, horrible side of Maycee Barber, where she can finish a fight. And you know, I think both girls in this fight really, you know, they deserved I mean, Amanda Hebas, sorry, deserved a little bit, you know, more than just her show money, because that was a really, really good fight. But Maycee Barber steps up the division now. She's moved three rankings to number 3 now in the division. And it's difficult, you know, the flyweight division. We got a couple of fights announced this week that Valentina Shevchenko will be facing Alexa Grasso in a Fight Night main event for the flyweight title in that rematch that, you know, we all expected to happen. It was, you know, that their first fight was a really good fight, but we expected that fight to go down, that rematch to go down. That's going down September 16th. I'm not sure where the Fight Night actually is. Let me just double check. Yeah, so you know, it's UFC Fight Night from the T-Mobile Arena. So whether it will be a fight night or whether, you know, I'm not quite sure how that's going to sort of play out at the moment. We've obviously got Talia Santos versus Erin Blanchfield, August 26th. Also announced last week was Manon Fiorot versus Rose Namajunas in Paris in September 2nd, I think that card is. So where does Maycee Barber go next? I think she faces Caitlin Chikagian, who is the gatekeeper to the top 5 at this point. You know, Chikagian obviously had her title shot against Valentina back in 2020, didn't go her way. She obviously then lost to Jessica Andrade. She went on a 4-fight win streak and then lost to Manon Fiorot. She's been out since October of last year. She's usually much more active than that. You know, she fought 3 times in 2020, 2 times in 2021, which is obviously the pandemic year, 4 times in 2020. So, you know, Caitlin Chikagian is the sort of gatekeeper to the top 5 of the division. I think Maycee Barber either fights her or fights Jennifer Maia, who's obviously coming off that big win against Casey O'Neill. But really good performance by Maycee Barber. And I think the other standout performance on the card for me, David Onama, really good knockout, but the standout performance and the standout kind of coming out moment was Brendan Allen. You know, he extended his winning run to 5. 4 submissions in that. You know, the only person he's gone the distance with is Jacob Malkoun, who's a difficult operator. If you look at some of the guys he's beaten on this run, you know, he picked up the victory against Sam Alvey. I mean, who doesn't pick up a victory against Sam Alvey at this point in Sam Alvey's career? Obviously, like I said, Jacob Malkoun, the decision. Krzysztof Jotko by rear naked choke in the first round. Then he jumped in, obviously, but he didn't jump in. The pair of them, Andre Muniz and Brendan Allen, were bumped up to the main event, and he submitted Andre Muniz after battering him for 3 rounds. Massively impressive. And then Bruno Silva. This is a guy that, you know, he went the distance with Alex Pereira in a losing effort. It took Gerard Meerschaert, who's a renowned submission specialist, 3 rounds to submit him. Brad Tavares, he knocked Brad Tavares out in the first round last time out for him. And Brendan Allen comes out there and just submits him in the first round. Extends his winning run to 5 now. And, you know, Brendan Allen's definitely one to keep an eye on. He's ranked number 11 at the moment. I'm not sure what will be next for Brendan Allen, because it's a pretty, you know, in my opinion, the middleweight division from the top, some upper echelons, to the sort of lower end of the division, there's a big jump there in class and skill. But if you look at the middleweight division, like I say, he's ranked number 11. people without a fight in the middleweight division as it stands, just looking down the rankings, we've obviously got the champion Israel Adesanya. You won't be facing him. Jared Cannonier coming off that big win. I don't think Jared takes that fight because it's all risk and no real reward. Marvin Vettori, I think that's quite a big step up. The one that I'm looking at is probably Roman Dolidze. You know, he went on that 4-fight win streak and then lost in London to Marvin Vettori. That one makes sense. Maybe they rebook the Jack Hermansson fight. I know they were scheduled to meet the beginning of June. Hermansson had to pull out of that one. Maybe they rebook that. I'm not quite sure. Hopefully they do, either Jack Hermansson or Roman Dolidze. But you know, like I said, the ceiling is extremely, extremely high for Brendan Allen. I think, like I say, they were the standouts from this past weekend's action. Now the PFL, I spoke last week about whether the PFL is kind of losing its interest a little bit. Main event, we saw Oliver Aubin-Mercier defeat Anthony Romero by knockout. Really good finish. Stabadu side just doing crazy spinning wheel kick knockouts. Maybe one of the best knockouts in PFL history. Shane Burgos picked up a unanimous decision win against Nishikawa. Clay Collard beat Stevie Ray, sending him into retirement. Delano Taylor obviously lost, but the contentious fight on this whole card is Nathan Schultz versus Roche Manifo. You know, both of these guys have previously won the PFL sort of tournament. But this is where the controversy kind of lies, and this is where I want to really get your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Because after the fight, the PFL have essentially stripped them of the opportunity to fight in the semi-finals. It would have been Nathan Schultz versus Clay Collard. They argued that the fight, because these two guys are friends, Nathan Schultz and Manifo are friends, you know, I think they're godfathers to each other's children. They argued that they didn't really fight with the sort of best intentions, with the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of, they didn't uphold the integrity of the sport. So they essentially suspended Nathan Schultz, giving Shane Burgos, a guy who they have invested heavily in. You know, they spent a lot of money to get Shane Burgos over to the PFL, essentially gifting Shane Burgos a place in the semi-final against Clay Collard. I'm not sure if I agree with that. And off the back of what I was saying last week about the PFL maybe losing their shine a little bit, it's not a great look for the PFL, in my opinion, to be sort of gifting positions to a guy who, let's be honest, they're investing in. They have invested in Shane Burgos. You know, Aspen Ladd is someone else that they have invested in. She obviously didn't get off to the best of starts. Very similar to Shane Burgos, to be honest. You know, Shane Burgos and Aspen Ladd, both sort of big names coming over from the UFC. Sorry, I'm just looking to see if I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, so you know, Aspen Ladd didn't make the semi-final of the women's featherweight because she didn't get enough points. Same with Shane Burgos, but for them to have invested so much money in Aspen Ladd and so much money in Shane Burgos, for both of those, their sort of golden geese, as it were, of this season, for both those not to make the cut, wouldn't have been great for the PFL. So they've almost sort of twisted it in their favour. They've done, you know, it's not, like I say, it's not a great look, and I'll be interested to see what more comes out. But what's really interesting is Francis Ngannou. He signed with the PFL, as we all know. And he's all about, you know, fighter, you know, fair pay for fighters, you know, fighters getting the best sort of deal that they can, and fighters getting a fair sort of crack at the whip, as it were. Now, is this fair? Nathan Schultz, I'll see if I can cut the tweet below, but Nathan Schultz kind of highlighted, you know, Francis, do something about this. You know, I want you to comment on this. From what I understand, Francis kept silent, which is highly controversial in my opinion. But you know, it is what it is for now. That's the PFL's decision. It'll certainly play out in the next few weeks, but we'll have to wait and see, and keep it locked to MMA Sucker, because we'll be keeping you up to date on that. But looking ahead to the UFC this weekend, well, we've got a little bit of boxing. Franchon Cruz-Dezurn takes on Savannah Marshall. Savannah Marshall, as we all know, is one of my favourite fighters to watch, because she's got that kind of Fury style, but with legitimate knockout power at a weight class that doesn't really. Well, in women's boxing, we don't get a lot of knockouts. So that's an interesting one. I watched the face-to-face with them too. It's really interesting. There's a lot of respect between the two, but also that sort of heated rivalry at the same time. And we've got Natasha Jonas stepping up for the IBF World Female Welterweight Championships against Candy Wyatt. And Ben Whittaker is also on the card. Ben Whittaker is very, very fun to watch. So make sure you don't miss that. Last time out, corner stoppage for Jordan Grant. As we know, he went the distance with Tommy Fury, and Ben Whittaker finished him in the third round of their fight. That's just a little bit of sort of UK-based boxing to keep an eye on this weekend. But we've got a UFC Fight Night card from the Apex. Sean Strickland is fighting in the Apex again. I'm not going to go into any great detail on this because it sounds bad, but I'm really struggling to get excited about this. I don't really care about this fight. Sean Strickland versus Abbas Magomedov. It's a strange fight. Magomedov's 1-0 in the UFC, and his UFC career is 19 seconds long. That's not to say that he hasn't had a career. He's 25, 4-1 outside of the UFC. He's fought at KSW. He's fought in the PFL. Holds a win over last season's PFL champion Sabadou Sai. But he's 1-0 in the UFC, and he's headlining a Fight Night main event against Sean Strickland, a guy who is no stranger to an extremely boring fight. And for someone that sort of talks the talk as much as Sean Strickland does, he doesn't walk the walk. There's far better fights on this card that aren't the main event. For Magomedov, he's not ranked in the top 15 at the moment. Topology have got him ranked as the 44th best middleweight. That kind of says all that you need to know about that. I know Topology rankings aren't always the most sort of legitimate, but you've got Magomedov ranked 44th, and you've got Sean Strickland ranked 4th. So I can see a Sean Strickland points decision. Am I interested in the fight? I'll be honest, absolutely not. It really doesn't interest me. The co-main event interests me. Grant Dawson versus Damir Ismagulov. Grant Dawson's a big step up in competition for him. He obviously he's been doing really well, Grant Dawson. He did miss weight. He's undefeated in the UFC. He's still quite young, I believe, Grant Dawson. He's only 29 years old, but he's got legitimate power. He finished Mike Trezana by rear naked choke, finished Derek Minner by rear naked choke, knocked out Leonardo Santos after losing that fight, drew with Ricky Glenn, came back, rear naked choke against Jar Gordon, rear naked choke against the Olympian Mark Masden. Now he faces Damir Ismagulov, a man who retired after his last loss against Arman Sarukian. But he's a legitimate talent. I don't quite know why Ismagulov has come back. If he was considering retirement and mentioned his retirement, I don't. It worries me that he's now back. But if Ismagulov wants to have one last roll at the dice, Grant Dawson is a great opponent to do that against, because he'll bring the fire. He'll bring the fire. He will, without a doubt, put Ismagulov on his back foot, and he'll give him the respect that he deserves, but he won't give him too much respect. Ismagulov, he's taken down 7 times against Arman Sarukian, which is worrying when he comes up to face someone like Grant Dawson, who, I've just listed off the amount of submissions that he's got. He averages 3.8 takedowns per 15 minutes. Sorry. Expect Ismagulov to be taken down in this one, but we'll see how much he's worked on that ground game and getting back to his feet and whatnot. It's an entertaining fight. It's an interesting fight, and that's certainly one I'll be tuning in for. Michael Morales returns 14-0, undefeated, 24 years old. He's a massive step up in competition. he's coming off the Contender Series. He's got a win over Trevin Giles. He's got a win over Adam Fugit. Now he takes a massive step up in competition against Max Griffin. Max Griffin's been there, got the T-shirt. He's done everything in the sport apart from, you know, really break into the top 10. But if you look at some of the wins on his record, Carlos Condit, Tim Means, Ken Song, but it always seems, you know, Mike Perry is a really good win. It always seems when Max Griffin steps up to that upper echelons of the division, he struggles. You know, Alex Moreno, Alex Oliveira, Neil Magny by split decision, which is a really good, you know, it's not a bad loss to have, a split decision loss against Neil Magny. Big step up for Moraes, but I'm excited for the Ecuadorian. Ariane Lipski returns against Melissa Gatto. Gatto obviously coming off the loss to Tracy Cortez, but then she looked good against Sajara Eubanks in the fight before that. We've got the return of Kevin Lee, which is a strange one for me. He's buried down on the, I think by the looks of Tapology, he's headlining the prelims. Kevin Lee, obviously a big star, former interim title challenger, multiple time main event, you know, headlined a UFC main event, pay-per-view main event. He lost to Daniel Rodriguez in August 2021. He returned in March 2022 for Eagle FC, went the distance with an aging, battered Diego Sanchez. And now he's back in the UFC against Rinyat Bakhrendiov. Butchered that, but you know, it is what it is. It's a very tough fight for Kevin Lee. It's a step up in competition for I'll call him the Gladiator, which is his nickname. You know, last time out he beat Brian Battle by decision in December. I don't know what Kevin Lee wants from this fight. It's something to break down next week, but you know, I'm not quite sure what he wants from this fight, to be honest. Yana Santos versus Carl Rosa at featherweight. It's interesting why it's at featherweight, and we've got, you know, Guram Kutateladze, sorry, he returns and steps in at late notice, placing Jordan Levitt, and it's a question of what state Alexander Romanov will step in at, because, you know, he was looking like he could really make a run at the top end of the division. You know, he was beating everyone by submission or knocking everyone out. Came up against Martin Tybor and he looked awful. Physically looked awful in that fight. Lost the fight by decision. He stepped in against Alexander Volkov in March of this year. Again, physically looked awful. He used to be a big heavyweight, but you could see some others. He just looks like an out of shape heavyweight at this point. And it's disappointing, but you know, it is what it is. What state will Alexander Romanov step in there? Looking, you know, what will he look like? Who knows? You know, it is what it is with Romanov. I think his time's done to be a heavyweight prospect, but who knows? Like I say, it's going to be. This was always going to be a shorter podcast, but next week we'll review the week that was the UFC card. If you missed the main event, you missed the main event. To be honest, you know, I don't like to shit on the UFC, but the card outside of that is really good. But then it's all full steam ahead. UFC 290 International Fight Week, Hall of Fame, and all that. One of the strongest cards of the year, without a doubt. And there'll be talking points from this weekend, without a doubt. You know, we got Kevin Lee, Kutateladze, Ismagulov, you know, these guys, and Sean Strickland. You know, he is in the main event. He will talk. He will get controversial, almost on purpose, just for the sake of getting controversial. But we'll see what this card throws out. Keep it locked to MMA Soccer, guys. Like the video. It helps myself and Tim and the channel out a lot. And yeah, have a good week, and I'll speak to you all hopefully Monday, maybe Tuesday next week, with Tim looking ahead to what guarantees to be a blockbuster UFC 290 card. So yeah, take it easy. I'll catch you later.